In this tutorial, we are going to be learning about site modeling with SketchUp, and the tools that we're going to use for the site modeling are the Sandbox Tools. So if your Sandbox toolbar is not turned on, you can go to View, Toolbars, scroll down and find Sandbox and make sure that's ticked. So the first tool we're going to look at is the From Contours tool, and we're going to import a 3D contour plan from a surveyor. So let's go to the File menu, then select Import, and from the Training Notes 1 folder that we've supplied, go to the DWG folder, find the contours.dwg file, go to Options, tick Merge Coplanar Faces, tick Orient Faces consistently, and typically site contours or 3D contours from surveyors are in meters, but in this instance they're in millimeters. So we're going to go OK and then select Import. It's going to give some results, and then we can select Close, and you can now see that it's now been imported. So just one quick note, when I go to File, Import and then Options again, I had unticked the Preserve Drawing Origin, so that meant when I imported it, it brought the contours into the plan or into the screen close to the origin. If I had have ticked Preserve Drawing Origin, it would have retained the origin that the surveyor had created. And so when you work on a plan like that, it's quite good because you make changes to your model, then you can export it back out of SketchUp and then import it into the surveyor's plan, and then it will be in the right location. So that's what Preserve Drawing Origin does. However, sometimes when you are importing a 3D contour from a surveyor, it can be like kilometers away from the origin, and from our experience, if it is so far away from the origin in SketchUp, it actually creates issues. It doesn't work very well. So it's sometimes best to leave Preserve Drawing Origin unticked. Okay, so this is a 3D contour, and it has obviously 3D heights to each contour line, which is quite helpful. If we were to get the tape measure, I could click on one of the contour lines, press the up arrow on my keyboard, then measure up to the next line, and you can see it's 500 millimeters between the contour lines. So that's quite good. That sounds about right. In this instance, it came in as a group or a component, so I can right-click and explode that if I don't want it to be, and give it some time. So now when I click on one of the contour lines, you can see that there's lots of segments built up on there. So if you want to simplify these contours, there's actually a plugin called Simplified Contours that's available on the 3D Warehouse. So let's grab that. So if we go to Window and then go to the Extension Warehouse, not the 3D Warehouse. Okay, you need to sign in. Okay, so it will bring up the sign in page. I just use my Google account. So you can type in your email address, then go next, and then just put in your password. So I'm going to pause it for this part. And then you can say next again. Okay, now I'm signed in. Then I can go to the search field area and type in Simplify Contours. Yep, well, there it was. So Simplified Contours tool. Okay, then we can search that. Okay, so this is an extension by the SketchUp team. So we can click on that. So once it brings up the simplified contours, we can select Install. and then it will say, would you like to install? Yes, and it's successfully been installed. Okay, so now when I close the extension warehouse, I will find under extensions the Simplified Contours tool. So if I was to select this 3D contour, so get the select tool, drag a selection around it, go to the entity info, and you can see, oh, it might not show, oh there it is, 4,342 edges, so it's quite detailed. So how it works is you select the contours like we've done, you go to extensions, simplify contours, type in 3 degrees for example, or maybe even 5, okay. So now when you click on a line, it's now a continuous line, it's now a curve. So if I select the contours again, you can see there's a lot less edges. So the first tool we're going to look at is the Sandbox tool, the From Contours tool. So you drag a selection around the contours that you would like to create 3D surfaces from. You can then click on the From Contours tool, and it simply just drags or drapes a 3D contour over top of those 3D contour lines. So that surface automatically gets put into a group. So if I double click on that, and again from an earlier tutorial, if you press the H key, you can see it hides the contour lines because they're not in the group. So what we might do is we might select everything, and then holding shift we're going to click on a part of the 3D contours, which will leave only the contour line selected. We can then go to edit, select the edges down the very bottom, go to make group, and then we've created a group for those contour lines. Then if we go to layers, we can add a layer and we can call it contour lines. Then use the drop down and select the contour lines. Then we can turn off the visibility of the layer. Then we could create one more layer and we could call it 3D contours. Select the contours, go to the drop down for the layers, and then select 3D contours. And you can test the visibility by just unticking and ticking the contour layers. So the next thing we're going to look at is how you can stamp a platform into your 3D contours. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle which is slightly bigger than the 3D contours, like that. So just grab the rectangle tool and draw the rectangle. Then with the select tool I'm just going to click on the rectangle tool and get the move tool and just move that up higher than the 3D contours. Spacebar to go back into select so you don't accidentally keep moving it. Then if I go to a top view, go to camera, then turn off the perspective, or you could click on your 2D view here and then zoom extents. Then I'm going to press the X for X-ray, or you can use X-ray up here, and you can kind of see the contour behind it, the contour lines below, so we can kind of design how we would like to stamp into the 3D contours. So I'm just going to turn off the contour lines. Okay, so I'm not too worried about the shape for this example or this tutorial, so I'm just going to design something roughly in the middle. So this could be your house platform that you want it to sit on. So let's just pretend that, you know, it's a house with a couple of wings off to the side, and we're not too worried about the platform there. If you want to, you could also design a bit of a driveway while we're at it, and we'll come back to the driveway. So we'll just go like that. Okay, so let's just assume that that's the driveway there with the select tool, and that's the house platform. So I'm just going to leave it there, or even move it up a little bit higher with the select tool. I'm going to select all, get the move tool, and just move that up a little bit higher so I can just see below. Okay, so now that we've created our platform, we can go and stamp this into the contours. But it might pay just to keep a backup copy of your 3D contours if you want to come back and make changes later. So if I was going to do that, for example, I could go and create another layer and go back up 3D contours. I could select the 3D contours and select copy up here, or edit copy. Then if I go edit paste in place, it will automatically put another copy in exactly the same place, so it looks exactly the same. But there's actually two groups there now. If I go to the drop down layer, I can then put that onto the backup 3D contours, and then I can just turn the visibility of that off. And I could turn off the 3D contours just to test it. So both 3D contours are off, the backup and the 3D contours. I could turn on the backup, or I could turn on the original. So now we have a backup in case we want to make changes at a later date. So we're ready to do a stamp. So how the stamp tool works is all you need to do is select the surface that you would like to stamp into your 3D contours, click on the stamp tool, and then it's going to give you a bit of an offset, and that's for basically like the batter of your cut. So it's allowing a little bit of angle between the actual cut and the top surface. So let's leave it at 1000, but you can actually type in more if you wanted to. So straight after clicking on the stamp tool, you could have typed 1500, enter, and then the offset would grow. So again, let's try that one more time. So you select the surface, you click on the stamp tool, then you type in what sort of offset you want. Okay. Once you've done that, you can then click on the site, and it will create a cut into that site. So you can see how the offset's working. It's giving a little bit of an angle so that it's not just a straight vertical cut, and we've now cut into that. So you can kind of get an idea of like where you would like the platform. It's obviously a balance between, you know, cut and fill. So about there is pretty good. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. And so that's why you might have wanted to keep the backup contours, because you may not have been happy with the cut, and if you do too much work after this, you may want to come back to that. If, for example, you haven't gone too far ahead, however, you could just go undo. We could tweak our cut, so we could select this line, move it out a bit further, reselect the surface, click on the stamp tool, then click on the site, and just adjust it accordingly. Okay, so that's it. You didn't even need to edit the group, but you just select the surface, click on the stamp tool, click on the site, and it's allowed you to do a cut within that group, even though we never edited it. The same works for the drape tool. If you had a driveway or a footpath or any type of outline that you would like to drape onto the surface, you just select the outline or the surface, click on the drape tool, then click on the site, and you can see it creates lines basically onto the site. So that's really quite cool, because when we go now to edit the group, you can see it's cut into the surface, and you can just paint it either a different color or maybe even push pull it with the joint push pull toolbar, which you can get off the Sketch Education website. It's just a handy little tool. Okay, so the next step is we're going to look at maybe creating a 3D contour directly from scratch. So if we click on the from scratch tool, down the bottom there we've got a grid spacing of 3000, but you could type 1000 for example. Click to begin, and you can see the grid's now developing. So if I take it along the read axis to begin with, I can maybe go 70,000, enter, and then I can bring it to the right, and I can maybe go 30 M, enter. So you don't actually have to type 30,000, you could just put an M in front of it. And so now we've got quite a detailed grid, and I'm just going to go back into 3D, so camera, perspective. Okay, so we have a from scratch surface now. Then we can double click on this from scratch surface, and we can click on the smooth tool. So it's quite an interesting name. If you click on that and bring your cursor into the screen, you get a nice big round circle. And then you just click and drag on the screen and you can adjust the contours. So you can come over to here and double click, then double click, and so you get quite interesting shapes just by dragging and pulling. So this can be quite handy if you're a landscaper and you're just creating some from scratch natural contours that you just want to show inside of your model. Or this could be a duvet, or it could be a pillow, you know, it could be anything you like using these tools. Once you've done that, you can get the select tool and then close the group. If you then click on the object, we can go to the soften edges menu, and then you can click on soften coplanar. And basically what that's done now is the angle between each of those triangles is less than 20 degrees, so that's why it's smoothed. If I go to a lower value, the angle between these surfaces is less or more than 6 degrees, that's why it's not smoothing. So if I drag that to the right, everything's smoothed and looking quite nice. So there's a couple more tools on the Sandbox toolbar that we could look at. So we've got this one here called Add Detail. So if I double click on a contour and I want to add some detail, it will just find the edges or endpoints of your triangles or contours, and you can just click and grab and pull up or pull down the triangles. So if we were to go to View, Hidden Geometry, you can see there's a surface there with nothing in the middle of the surface, so I can click there and then it will just divide it into 3, and then I can just add a bit more detail. Or I could find an endpoint and just pull it up and down. So it only works vertically, so it's just up and down. The next tool is Flip Edges. So if I click on that, it will find any edges and then flip them within that surface. So sometimes that can be quite good for smoothing things out. So if I go to View, Hidden Geometry again, you can see that there's a bit of work that we've done. But now we need to smooth it. So we can either select the surface, double click, and then use the slider on the soften edges over on the right. Or you can get the eraser, holding Control, you can click on the lines and smooth those out, like so. Okay, so let's say there's an area that looks really rugged, you know, it's just not very smooth. So up here it kind of looks a bit rough. So if I go to View, Hidden Geometry, this area here doesn't look so good. So I'm editing the group so I can get down to the surfaces. So I'm going to select all that there and then select Delete. And even this extra piece here, I'm going to get the eraser and just click on that. Okay, then go to View, Hidden Geometry again. So I've deleted it because I wanted to improve it. So what you can do with the From Contours tool as well is just select just the outline now. I can then click on the From Contours and it just creates a patch over top of that particular area. You may need to delete some excess geometry, so if we go to Edit Group, which is the Select tool, double click on it, then I can get the eraser and just erase the excess surfaces. Once you've done that, we'll just double check. Okay, using the H key, I can see that there's a little bit of excess line. Okay, once I've done that, I can just explode this and then it merges into the original surface. There's a few extra lines, but I can grab those with the eraser and the Control key and take those out. So that's a really nice way of just repairing your site model. So lastly, what we could do to the model is color it up. So I'm not too interested in the from scratch surface anymore, so let's delete that. I would recommend keeping your platforms above, just in case you again wanted to change any of the design. So let's create another layer and just call it site design. And make it a group first before putting it onto a layer. So right click after selecting it, make group, pull the drop down for the layers and site design. Okay, so if we were to paint this up, you just get the select tool, double click on the group, then click on the paint bucket. Then we can go to landscaping, just find a grass material to paint onto it. If the scale's not quite big enough, you can go to the edit tab and increase that, so it looks a little bit more realistic. Then go to the select tab again, drop down, and we can find asphalt and concrete. So you could just go and grab a concrete material there. And if we choose concrete or sand maybe for the top of the platform, and even for the sides. Then if you wanted to break let's say a surface, because that painted all in one go, we could get the eraser, and if you hold shift and control, you can click on a line and then unhide it, and then what that does is it breaks it apart, so it's dividing it, so you can go and get another material, for example, and just paint that onto it. So it's pretty useful, the Sandbox tools. You can quickly site model exactly what you want to do with it.